something that all of us struggle with. Are you ever at a place where you feel like you're like sharing a story and you're putting your whole heart and soul into it, and then someone's tuning out and they're not really listening to you? Right? Anyone ever had that feeling before? You're like sharing your heart, you're telling them your favorite story, you're telling them your favorite joke, and then they're just kind of looking at you, or they're looking off in the distance, and they're like, wait, what were we talking about again, right? How many of you guys have been that person before? Yeah? I'm sure we've all been in a place where, A, we had someone who didn't really listen to us, or B, we were that person to others. And the truth is, when we have someone who doesn't really listen to us, it doesn't always feel awesome, right? Like I think it's true that we don't all love that. And then we kind of get to this idea, and it's like, hey, no one's really listening to me anymore. It happens a lot. It affects us a little bit. And why? It's because we want people to care. Man, we want people to truly listen to us. We want people to really value what we're talking about and what's really going on in our lives. Now, the cool thing is, even though the world struggles with listening, we have a God who is a killer listener, right? Even though some of us might have friends who it's like, hey, they're not awesome listeners, or maybe you feel like your parents, you tell them this over and over again, they're not really listening to you. We have a God who wants to know every single detail about your life. He wants to know how you're really doing. He wants to know what you're really going through. He wants to know what you need from him. And he already knows all those things, but he wants to hear them from you directly. And that's why he gave us the gift of prayer. Man, the ability to be able to talk with him and have a personal relationship with him. So today, we're going to look at a dude in the Bible named David. Anyone heard of David before? Yeah? David's a really interesting guy because he's actually a historical figure who was just a killer leader. If you look at like some of the better leaders of all time throughout history, David would be on that list. But then on top of that, David was a guy who, like I said, started his ministry when he was young. He was a guy who started following God at a young age, and with that, you gotta believe there were a lot of times where he was overlooked. And he was even the dude who was like, hey, David Goliath, right? That sort of idea, like he killed Goliath. We are going to tune into his story, but we need to start from the beginning. So with that being said, are any of you guys like professional actors / actresses who want to come up here for a demonstration? Holy Cross, are you a professional actor?
Yeah.
All right. So, we got Holy Cross, come on up here. Oh my goodness. Holy Cross is like more popular than Ryan Seacrest. I don't know. Where you go? All right. So, Holy Cross, you are going to play the role of David. All right. Now here's the deal. We need someone to play the role of King Saul. Who wants to play the role of King Saul? What do we got? All the ladies. You want to play the role of King Saul? All right, come on up here. Not like as much as Kenny's role, but not as fun. All right, let's. Who wants to be Goliath? Goliath. Let's go. You want to come on up? He stood up. He was so happy. This was one of the biggest moments of his young life. All right, who wants to play the role of my man Samuel? Samuel. All right, a lady, you want to come on up? Are you a professional? I think this will be good. So here's what's going to happen, all right? Let's go over our rules again. You guys can actually step down here a little bit. Now, I'm going to tell you guys what to do, and I believe if any of you guys are theater people, I think we would call this improv. Is that correct? Is improv kind of like when you just wing it? Like, hey, we're just going to go for this thing, we're going to act it out. All right, so are you cool with the improv thing, yeah? All right, so we got David here. We got King Saul, yeah? Goliath. I should have told because of the biceps. I should, you know what I'm saying? That's a big fella right there. And we got my boy King Saul. All right, Goliath, King Saul, and right here we have Solomon, correct? Alright, so you play an important part of the story too. So I'm going to share some of the things from David's story, so you guys are going to listen up, and then as I share them, you guys are going to act them out. Does that make sense? So go ahead and go for it. Do it in improv as we talk about it. So, right away, David was a young boy. So you're a little boy, just kind of growing up. He was doing his thing. I don't think they played baseball back then, but they probably played like Dodge Rock or something. You know, I don't know. So Kenny was playing Dodge Rock growing up, and then all of a sudden, while he was a young boy, where's King Saul? You're the king. Now, at first you're a good king. Look that way. That's your audience back there, all right? Don't forget about your audience. You were a good king, all right? So you got your crown on, that sort of idea. But then all of a sudden, King Saul became not such a good guy pretty quickly. So there was a time where King Saul was doing good stuff, and then he kind of became a jerk, right? Pride got little bit, all right? So, now here's the deal. King Saul and David had a pretty close relationships to start out, all right? King Saul really liked David. They were close until all of a sudden, David started to get a little bigger. He started to get a little stronger, a little bit more popular, and he didn't like them quite as much. However, where's Solomon at? Right here? There was a time when David was a young boy, so you're still young, and Solomon came up to David, and he anointed him with oil. So go ahead and pour a little something on Kenny there. That's exactly how I did it. I don't know. Maybe in the Catholic Church. I don't know. Anyways, he anointed him with oil, and what that symbolized was this. It said, hey, David, look, man, you need to know God is with you. God has an important place in your life, and not only that, you are going to be the king of Israel. Now, David was a young dude. He's like, wait, king? Like, do you see me, man? I'm like, well, I got tons of older brothers. You picked me. He was kind of shocked, like, what's going on here? And then all of a sudden, Saul starts to shake your head, like, this is where the relationships start to went downhill a little bit, right? They started off cool, but didn't really dig it. Then on top of that, my boy David's here. Where's Goliath at? Now, Goliath. He was the big, strong, tough Philistine who was way larger than any other person they'd seen at that point. He was way stronger, and every day he came out and he's like, hey, check this out. We're in a war right now. If you can kill me, we'll surrender. If I kill you, your people surrender. So they get in a fight here. Now here's the deal. Everybody was scared. They're like, hey, I don't want a piece of Samson here, or not Samson. I don't want a piece of Goliath here, right? Except David's like, you know what? I want some. Can you tell me you want some? He's like, look, you need to know that, hey, you might be bigger, you might be stronger, you might be a little tougher, but he's like, check this out. I got something you don't got because God is on my side. That's what he said. So then, he whipped out his sling. Go ahead and whip out your sling. They went into battle. He ripped out his little stone that he picked up from the garden, and he launched that thing straight at him. And then all of a sudden, Goliath died. So you're out of here now. You gotta go sit back window. That's where the dead Goliaths go. Right over there. Alright, so all of a sudden, this dude David, who started to rise in popularity, just rose a ton. Because he was the one who ended this war that all the people hated. They were scared, they were terrified, and King Saul, all of a sudden, a little bit more, is starting to get angry, right? He's starting to get a little bit more jealous. They had a cool relationship, but these things started to hit the fan. So with that being said, Saul did something very healthy, and he was like, you know what? I'm going to try and kill David. Not healthy, actually, right? He did something horrible. He's like, David, I know you're my friend, but I'm going to try and kill you. So you have a spear here, right? Take your spear, and you're going to try and chuck that at David, and he's going to dodge it. So David's like running away from it. He can like feel the arrows like shooting by his face, like feel the wind. And he's like, yo, Saul, we used to be cool. What is going on here? And you just took me out. He's ticked, right? He's like, we used to be cool, now you're what is the deal? And so Saul, all of a sudden, after trying to kill him, he's unsuccessful in that. He really gets messed up in a big way. So just act like you're not really doing well. He's not doing well in life. And then all of a sudden, there's a lot to this story here, but he dies in battle. So you're dead. Go ahead and die. Go ahead and die. Just like, oh, yeah. That's a good answer. So then, when he dies, this leaves us in a place where David becomes king. Alright, so you got to put your crown on. All of a sudden, you're king. Yeah. And in that moment, David actually ended up being a really good king. He had some struggles, just like everyone has in the Bible, but he did a lot for God. All because he was really one of the greatest kings to ever live for the Israelites. All because God trusted him as a young king. So with that being said, let's go ahead and give that up for all of our actors. And you can take a seat. Alright, now, with that being said, throughout the life of David, there was a lot going on there, right? He was a dude who started out as just this little tiny thing, a nobody, who everybody looked at him and they're like, man, he's too tiny to do anything big for God. He's not strong enough. He's not cool enough. He's not popular enough. He's not wealthy enough. And then all of a sudden, this guy looked at him who was really a prophet, and he's like, hey, look, David, you need to know this. God has special plans for you. And oftentimes, we look at our lives and we feel like we're not much. Maybe we feel a little bit like a young David, and then we read something in the Bible where it's like, hey, you need to know I have a plan and a purpose for our lives, and that doesn't really register. But the thing is, man, God really does have a plan for all of our lives. And the biggest thing is, He's working on that plan in your life right now. So throughout his journey, man, I am sure that David had a long list of questions. I'm sure he was in a place where he was talking to God and sharing his stories with God. And there's even like scripture in the Bible that goes on and on and on, talking about how close David's relationship with God was. And you got to believe there was times where he was lonely and he told God, hey God, I'm lonely. I feel like all my older siblings have friends. I'm not really the cool one. I feel like Saul has all this power. I'm just kind of sitting in this place waiting for you to do something. There were other times where he talked to God, where he was in a place where he was surrounded by enemies. He was in a place where Saul was his mentor with all the power, and they were close, and then all of a sudden Saul tried to kill him, and he felt betrayed. He told God, God, I am not feeling this. What am I going to do? And then on top of that, he talked to God when he was discouraged, when he was scared. He talked to God when he was angry, and when he was desperate. And in that moment, because they had such a deep relationship, God used every part of David's life to turn him into the man he eventually became. So maybe you're in a place where you are going through some stuff. And maybe you're in a place where you are waiting for God to do something in your life. Just last week we said this. We said, wait, while we're waiting for something in life, God is working. But when you start to have a relationship with God, and when you start to pray with Him and talk with Him on your way to school and tell Him what's going on in your life, when we're waiting on things in our life, God is listening. Man, God listens to us. Never take that for granted. The creator of the world, the person that made me and made you and made the world and all that, He listens to you. Man, even with like another 7 or 8 billion people on this planet, He listens to you. Why? Because He cares about you and because He loves you. I want us to look here at a piece of scripture that's really one of the most popular pieces of scripture in the Bible, but we're going to look at it with a little bit of a different angle. So, maybe you guys have heard of Jeremiah 29:11, and it says this, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." Man, that's a verse that we say in church over and over and over again. But why is it so important to go home and spend time with God? It's because that doesn't stop there. You see, that's a killer piece of scripture, and that is the hope that we have in Jesus. But then the verses after that are just as powerful. So once again, it says this, it says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." Right off the bat, I want you to know, God has good plans for your life. David was in a place where he was like, "Man, God, your plans kind of look like they stink. I'm young. What are you doing?" And God was like, No, David, I have good plans for your life. God has good plans for your life. But then he says this in verse 12. He says, "Then you will call on me, and you will come to me, and you will pray, and I will listen to you." Wait, God, you listen to me? Yes, I will listen to you. He says this, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." Maybe you're in a place where you're looking for a relationship with God. Maybe you're in a place where you don't even know or believe if He's really out there. If you seek God with all your heart, you're going to find Him. That's a promise He makes us. He says, "I will be found by you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place where I carried you from exile." You see, this is a promise God has for us. A promise that if we really come and pray, if we really spend time with God, we will be able to have a relationship with Him. So I just want to ask you, man, when's the last time you took a few minutes out of your day to have a conversation with God? I don't want us to be a youth minister that takes this for granted. I don't want to be a man that takes this for granted, yet so often I do. Man, every single day we have the ability to talk to our Creator. Man, our perfect God who loves us for who we are. Every single day we have an opportunity to tap into that relationship, and I don't want us to take it for granted. So if you haven't prayed in a while, man, today should be your day to start. It's just a simple conversation like you'd have with a friend or a close family member. Just tell them, hey God, man, if you're there, show yourself to me. Hey God, if you're there, will you help me with this circumstance I'm going through? God, I'm hurting. God, I'm scared. Will you be there for me? Will you give me a little hope? Will you give me a little peace? And when you do that, God works in those situations. So there's two things I want you to do when it comes to talking with God as we wrap up today. The first is this. God knows what's going on in your life, but still, He wants to hear it firsthand, right? He wants to have a personal relationship with you. So share your situation with Him. And on top of that, man, when you talk to God, don't feel like you have to say all these churchy words. Don't feel like you have to get it out all straight up. No, He wants you to be real, man. He wants you to tell Him how you're really doing. If you're scared, if you're ticked, if you're angry, if you're hurting, He wants to hear that from you. If you're doing well, He wants to hear that from you. If you're thankful, He wants to hear that from you. Tell Him how you're really doing. Share your real situation with Him. And the last one is, share your feelings. David wrote a good amount of the Bible, actually, in the Old Testament. One was the book of Psalms. And if you read through the book of Psalms, it's actually like a really beautiful piece of scripture. And the reason it's so cool, the reason it's so beautiful, is because it's David's heart, really kind of like heart on his sleeve right there. Like him really sharing what's really going on in his life. He shared his heart with God. And because of this, because David was so real with God, God actually referred to him as a man after God's own heart because he was real. So share your feelings with God. Be real with Him and share your situation with Him. Man, if we can all take a step in our prayer life, if we can all take a step in having an intimate relationship with God, I'm telling you, it will just do wonders for our lives and our student ministry as well. So I just want to challenge you. Take some time and spend time with God today. And even this week, spend some time in prayer. Spend some time being like, God, if you're out there, will you show yourself to me? If you do, I promise you, He will. Let's go ahead and pray together.